Also, what are you again, Wayne? In addition to attorney at law, he is the Jamaica Diaspora Board member for this, our region. Attorney Wayne Goldie.
Thank you, Father Lord. I won't tell you the secrets I know about Father Lord, because you believe me, and you probably have to move to Orlando to stay in one of the rooms there. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Consul General Francis Hall, welcome. My colleagues, Cecilia Walker Huntington, and Mr. Oliver Langstead from St. Mary. It's good that we can have laughter during this time. I was saying to Tyrone, as a man that entertains our community, that he probably needs to have more of his events, probably instead of once a month, 4 times a month, because we are in a time where it's very hard for some people to really fathom what's going on around them. And we welcome the opportunity as practitioners of law, licensed attorneys here in the state of Florida practicing in immigration law in the trenches every day to come out and speak to our community. We are of the community, we are from the community, and we are always in our communities because your experience is our experience. I know these 3 attorneys here will all tell you that the reason why one of our major area of practice is immigration law is that we can relate to it. We're all immigrants. We all came here from somewhere else. And so when things happen to impact our community in the area of immigration, we feel it because it happens to our friends, our families, our church members, brothers and sisters. So we can relate on that level. Now it disturbs us in no end when we hear a lot of people giving information or expressing opinions within our own communities that we know are not correct. And this serves to even frighten the members of our community even more, and will lead them eventually to make bad decisions based on bad information. Because the person who's farthest away from you, who's not close to you, is not the one you have to worry about. It's the one that have access to you, closest to you, that you'll get that phone call from that says, you know, somebody told me this, that they're taking people off the airplane in Jamaica, they're not allowing them to come to the United States. If you hold a green card, you're in trouble because of this new executive order. And these are the things that we're dealing with on a daily basis. And it's very hard to assure our folks, our community, that there is good and credible information out there and how they should get it. So we appreciate the opportunity to talk to you tonight. I'm just going to talk to you briefly about interactions with the Immigration Service and your status, whether it's through the courts, police, USCIS, Immigration and Customs Enforcement. There are several ways in which you can come into contact with immigration authorities. And the end result of your contact with the immigration authorities will depend on what is called your status in the United States, whether you're a naturalized citizen, whether you're a green card holder, whether you're a visa holder, whether in a category of a visitor or worker, whether you have expired status based on the green, not the green card, but your visa, visitor's visa or work visa, or whether you're somebody who has absolutely no documentation, meaning you came over the border and you were not inspected. Now, what we often tell people, let's start with green card holders. Of course, a person who has a green card in this country is someone who's basically allowed to live here without going back to the embassy for a visa. I mean, I cannot put it any simpler. It doesn't give you rights to vote, certain benefits you don't have access to, and you are always at peril because that visa through the green card is granted to you by discretion. And it's like a contract. You sign a contract, you have to perform a certain way. If you don't, that green card can be pulled. But for the times we're in now, we want to assure folks that if you come into contact with the immigration authorities or with law enforcement, one of the things that will happen is that they will try and determine what your status is. For example, it's so simple. You could be driving, you get stopped by the police, driver's license probably by mistake is suspended, you can get detained, arrested. There's arrangements with the federal government, with some cities and states, that once you get into the hands of law enforcement, they will run a background to make sure of your immigration status. With that inquiry, immigration authorities, if you're detained, can put a hold on you to verify your status. So for green card holders, it's especially important that you have documentation of your status. You are actually required to carry your green card at all times. People don't know that. You can also be charged with a misdemeanor offense for not carrying your green card. Your green card is really your certification to them that you have some status on the spot. Now, people can also go to court. You can have an infraction, say traffic infraction, or misdemeanor infraction, or felon infraction, and you go to court, and whatever the outcome of that court case is, that information is uploaded to the immigration authorities also. And by that, they can come into contact with you whether or not you have status or no status, or you have a green card and you have something in your background. Immigration authorities can detain you, they can interview you. Believe it or not, just simple traveling on the street, taking a bus, Greyhound, that bus can be stopped by immigration officers, and they have full authority to come board that bus and check people's paperwork, check people's status. Same thing with the airports, ports of entry, stuff like that. Now, if you are a visitor to this country and you have a valid visa, or you are working here under one of the work categories, you can also have contact with immigration authorities without doing anything wrong. You could be in your workplace, for example, and the immigration authorities come to that workplace to check people's statuses, although they have more stringent rules now to determine, for employers to really determine if people have their legal documentation. They still have that right to come into that workplace, and they can come into contact with you. Now, the question often is asked, what do I do if I'm contacted by the immigration authorities? And when I say contacted, it means you are questioned, interviewed. You know, do you have a right not to answer questions, not to produce your identification? It's a very complex issue, but the general rule is usually if they're asking your permission to do something, they usually don't have permission. But I would advise you to travel with proper identification at all times. Develop a plan if you are detained, have contact numbers available. And most importantly, if you are in a situation where you know, because some people know that they have a problem, regardless if it's an overstay or if you have something in your background, if you're a green card holder, be prepared, because you should, one, consult with a qualified immigration attorney if you do have one of these problems beforehand. So at least you can know how to handle the situation. You should have contact numbers. People should know where your immigration documents are. Because, believe it or not, with this order that's coming, or that's out and in limbo right now, because there are several restraining orders issued thus far, the order doesn't directly affect you as Jamaicans, so to speak. It doesn't point to you specifically as Jamaicans. Right now, it is pointed to 7 countries, people from 7 countries. However, when they throw that broad net, what it simply means is that there's going to be a more stringent type of enforcement. Enforcement at the borders, meaning the airports, piers, walking across the border, whether it's from Mexico, coming through, being inspected. They are going to be dotting every I, crossing every T now once they interact with you. And I encourage folks not to take chances. If you know you have something in your background or a relative has something in their background, the advice in terms of contact, be prepared. You know, we can't tell you every scenario, but people are reporting now that they're seeing more Department of Homeland Security checkpoints, cars on the road, whatever. It's an indication that enforcement is going to be increased. And also, if you're traveling back into the country, be aware that once you hit that port of entry, immigration, they usually call them Customs and Border Patrol, we're going to lump everybody into one. They have the authority to question you. They have the authority to search you. They have the authority to take your phone, go through your phone, take your computer, go through your computer. It's nothing new, but it's just that you have to understand that the enforcement priorities and levels are up. You know, there used to be a lot of discretions sometimes that the officers at the border would exercise. For example, people with green cards who travel out of the United States and they stay more than 6 months. They can automatically say that you have abandoned your residency, and they can put you in the deportation process where you have to go see a judge, go through that process to prove to them that you have not abandoned your residency. It's what we call a prima facie case if you stay out more than 6 months. So there are a lot of people in that position that go out of the country, and for whatever reason they have to stay more than 6 months. Understand that there are procedures to do that properly. It's not that you can't go out and stay for more than 6 months. There are procedures. And so that's why we're here tonight, to kind of answer your questions on some of what you've been hearing as far as what affects you or your relatives. I often tell people that, you know, the numbers in the room doesn't really indicate the success of something like this. It's what you take away from it and take back to your relatives, because we understand what the situation is. There are often times where people don't want to come into public, expose themselves. But the key is be prepared. And we are hopefully here tonight to offer you some additional information as far as if you come into contact with the authorities, the immigration authorities, whether you're a citizen, permanent resident, visitor, undocumented, how best to deal with it. Thank you very much, and I look forward to talking to you a little more.
Thank you very much, Attorney Wayne Golding. Reflecting on what people can do now, and as you have heard, things have been quite a challenge for some time. I'd like, now that the Consul General, Franz Hall, is here, he did send a message that he was on his way, and he is here. So I'll call upon him, Consul General Franz Hall. Would you kindly come, sir? Who's going to reflect with us on the role of the consulate in the status of its nationals in the United States. Consul General Franz Hall.
Thank you, Father Ward, for conveying my apologies for being late. Ladies and gentlemen, certainly a pleasure to be with you here this afternoon, this evening. Members of the panel, I must commend each and every one of you for coming together to share your views on matters that are critical to our Jamaican community here in the United States of America. Of course, the consulate supports activism and encourages the community to deal with issues that will affect the Jamaican community here in the U.S. And we also encourage you to become very active in politics, not only through running for office, but certainly in voicing your opinions, your concerns with your elected officials. That is a way of ensuring that your voices are heard and your positions are taken into consideration. Now, ladies and gentlemen, we're here this evening to look at the 3 executive orders in particular that have an impact on immigration. And I should state up front that it is beyond the position of the consulate or the purview of the consulate to speak on political matters in the USA, as this could be interpreted as interference in domestic affairs. We have to be neutral on these matters. So it is quite fitting that this activity this evening is being led by distinguished members of the community, which, as I said, we fully endorse and support. But we do have an interest in these matters to see whether and to what extent these orders are likely to affect Jamaicans at home in Jamaica and here in the USA. The Minister of Foreign Affairs and Foreign Trade, Senator the Honorable Kamina Johnson-Smith, made a statement last week appealing for calm and urging persons to get the facts before spreading hysteria and inaccurate information. She noted that there were 3 orders, and it's important that we don't confuse them because they deal with different things. We just heard Attorney Golding speaking of the travel ban, which is 1, increased border control measures, and internal strengthening of the immigration matters, immigration legislation. So what can we do as a consulate? We encourage persons to become regularized. If your green card is expired, renew your green card, even though we're of the view that you should not be renewing a green card, but applying for citizenship as soon as you're eligible to apply for citizenship. Because really that is the only way that you're going to secure your rights and benefits in the USA. If you're undocumented, including overstaying on your time allotted in the US, we strongly recommend that you take the necessary measures to regularize your status, or if that is not possible, to return home. What else do? We issue documents. We issue proof of Jamaican citizenship. If you need a passport, you will come to our office. If you need a Jamaican birth certificate, we can facilitate those applications. But I should add that there are no shortcuts. You have to provide all the documentary requirements to process these various forms of identification. We cannot provide legal advice. That is beyond our purview. But we can certainly recommend a list of lawyers to you who you may contact to see if any of those lawyers would be interested in defending or taking up your case, as the case may be. Now, a very important point was just raised on deportation. And I should use this opportunity to state clearly that the Consulate General of Jamaica / the government of Jamaica does not deport anyone from the USA. But we have a legal and internationally binding obligation to issue travel documents for persons who have received orders of deportation and who have been verified, their identity and nationality has been verified that they are Jamaican nationals. Once that is done, we are obligated under international law to issuing a travel document for that person to return to Jamaica. So I just want to dispel the notions that are held far and wide that we deport persons. We do not. Now, where you have any questions, concerns, we encourage you to seek qualified legal advice and not to rely on hearsay or, as many of us have seen in the last couple of days, unverified WhatsApp messages that are very detailed but convey erroneous information. But ladies and gentlemen, we make light of it just now, but this is really a very important issue and we need to remain informed. With those few remarks, ladies and gentlemen, I too look forward to learning from our esteemed attorneys that we have gathered, and I just want to say thank you again to Father Ward for volunteering these facilities to host this very important meeting. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Consul General. Before moving on, and the next speaker would be Attorney Oliver Langstadt. Why are we here? We're here to have a conversation. We're here to learn that therefore you can leave not just informed, but equipped and ready for your next steps. Informed, equipped for action. Action. In a short while, after the presentations, it will be your time to ask the questions, to debate, but I ask you to be short and sweet. If you take too long, the microphone will go off, there's a trap door beneath your feet, and you will go straight to heaven. We're here to separate fact from fiction with the Trump immigration executive orders. And Attorney Oliver Langstadt will give more on that matter.
Good evening, everyone. First of all, before I make my presentation, thank you to Father Ward, and thank you, Father Ward, for offering the facilities of God's house to deal with such an important issue. Very grateful to you for doing that. Let me start out by saying that we as a Jamaican community have a tendency to like to listen to village lawyers. Delroy, who knows Alton, who is friends with Desmond, is the expert. Them run things, okay? The problem is that none of these fine and esteemed gentlemen are lawyers in terms of going to law school or qualified, but somehow they have divine knowledge. This hurts the community and it is poor form. Let me say it another way. You don't go to the hardware store to have your heart checked if you have high blood pressure or heart palpitations. You go to a cardiologist. I cannot emphasize to each and every one of you enough the importance, especially now, of consulting qualified, competent, good legal counsel, such as Delia, Wayne, and myself. We all have many years of experience. We're on the front lines. We know immigration law. We've been in immigration court. We know how the immigration courts function, as well as Department of Homeland Security. In addition, we have something else that Delroy and company don't have, and that is we have attorney-client privilege. When you come to see us and you speak to us, it's confidential. When you speak to others, there's a tendency in the community for Delroy and others to say, boy, you want to see, this brother tell me. And then it's all over the community or business. So, qualified, competent, capable legal counsel. Now, turning to the executive orders, there were two key ones issued. Everybody is aware of the one on the travel ban for the 7 countries, which is the main point of the litigation that is going on. However, the one that slipped under the radar, which is like the bouncer that comes from Michael Holding that you didn't see, is the one for internal enforcement. And that was issued by President Trump 2 days before the one that everybody seems to be fixated on. Now, just to give you a quick summary, it's titled Enhancing Public Safety in the Interior of the United States. These executive orders are serious, ladies and gentlemen. They mean business. I overheard a conversation today, actually somewhere, where one of our esteemed fellow countrymen said, that executive order, nah, say nothing, man. That no real Congress-run things. The problem is the person's mistaken. The executive order carries weight and punch. And also remember, it was executed by a Republican president, and the House itself is a majority Republican one, as well as the Senate. More specifically, I want you to understand now more than ever the importance of being careful with your status, knowing your rights, and being aware of what you can and cannot do. Enforcement priorities have been established by the executive order dated 25th of January 2017. And by the way, you can see these orders for yourself and read them yourself if you would like by simply going to the internet and going to the White House, the web page of the White House, and then you'll see a subsection that says executive orders. And right there in print are all the executive orders, actually by order of date signed by President Trump. So on the enforcement priorities, I want you to note that they are going to be hiring, the government, 10,000 additional immigration officers, which I can assure you are not being assigned to hurry people to become citizens. They're being hired for enforcement purposes, to catch people, to interact with people, to detain people. The priorities, and I want to read them to you quickly. Anyone who has been convicted of any criminal offense, if that has been made aware to an immigration officer, can result in immediate detention. Anyone, and notice this one, folks, it's very, very ominous. Anyone who has been charged with any criminal offense where such charge has not been resolved. So for example, you could have the charge, but you're doing, for example, a pre-trial intervention program. You may have an excellent attorney that has negotiated a good deal, but you have to go to certain classes or you have to fulfill certain requirements. And you come in contact with an immigration officer who notes that two things. What happens when they note that? They could take you into custody. You can't complete the program. You're in breach. Now you have a conviction. Anyone who has committed acts that constitute a chargeable criminal offense. So if somebody has observed you doing a crime and reported it to immigration. If you have engaged in fraud or willful misrepresentation in connection with any official matter or application before a government agency. In other words, be careful what you apply for and be careful what you tell the government. Anyone who has abused any program related to receipt of public benefits, meaning welfare, food stamps, public assistance in any way. If you are subject to a final order of removal but never complied with it, trouble. And finally, and this one, please watch out for it. Anyone who in the judgment of an immigration officer otherwise poses a risk to public safety or national security. Simply put, if them no like you. All right? So, be very, very careful with it. In addition, some of you might have noticed that maybe about 3-4 years ago, Miami-Dade County took what many people thought was a good moral stand and did not want to continue with the detainer program that the U.S. government has, and Miami-Dade developed the reputation of being a sanctuary city. If you have been following the news, you notice that Mayor Jimenez did, let's just say, a reversal, or he engaged in what you would call the Macarena, and he has withdrawn that, and now he said, we will comply. Well, in the executive order, in subsection 9A, there is the language that says, in furtherance of this policy, the Attorney General and the Secretary of Homeland Security, in their discretion and to the extent consistent with law, shall ensure jurisdictions that willfully refuse to comply with 8 U.S.C. 1373, which is sanctuary jurisdictions, are not eligible to receive federal grants except as deemed necessary for law enforcement purposes by the Attorney General. In other words, they're holding the purse over us in Miami-Dade County and other parts of the nation. That is how the pressure is applied, and that is how all of a sudden the mayor has said, well, upon further review, I am now going to reinstate it. So this executive order is the one that is of most importance to the Caribbean community, the Caribbean immigrant community, and of course, Jamaicans. I want you to note that it is especially essential that if any one of you have problems associated with criminal convictions, pending criminal charges, misrepresentation to any federal official, you consult with an attorney to discuss the consequences. In addition, if any of you feel that you are eligible to apply for citizenship because you have a green card, but maybe there was something in the past, you need to consult. I met with somebody about a week ago who said to me that, well, they kind of had something in the past. So what is kind of had something in the past? Yes, I had a little ganja thing. A little ganja thing. Please just explain yourself to me. Well, I don't really know that I have to because my friend, it's always this friend, and I never know who the friend is, but my friend said that since I went into a program, it wasn't really a conviction. I said, okay, can you show me any documents? No, that was like 20 years ago. I don't really have anything. The point is they were on the verge of going to apply for citizenship and they really don't know. Be careful. If you've had something in the past and you want to be a citizen, it may be something that can be properly dealt with an attorney. But don't just take a chance, file, and say, I go hope. Don't do it. Don't do it. In closing, I would like to emphasize that so many of you are here who have worked so hard in this community, and you have made a life for yourself in the United States. And you have worked hard to support yourselves, your children, your loved ones. Be serious about that this president and this administration is serious about immigration. It should become as no surprise to you because it was said time and time again. The surprise to me, honestly, is that people are surprised that the president is doing these things. What would be a surprise is if he didn't do anything. Because remember, this has not been a traditional election in the sense that he's not really an ideologue. He is rather someone that chose to run for office and happened to be successful. So he's doing things differently. What I can say is these executive orders are to be taken seriously. They are law. Federal agents are following them. I can tell you, I know personally where there were Cubans who usually were pushed to the side and said, well, we probably can't deport them, we won't bother with them. They are detaining them. Notice that before President Obama demitted office, he changed policy and he said that certain Cubans would be repatriated back to Cuba or removed to Cuba because they had a comprehensive agreement as part of the normalization of relations. I say this to you because traditionally Cubans didn't really get deported. If they're going to start getting deported, don't underestimate that other communities will come under close scrutiny. So, as I close, I would like to say, and I know I'm sorry I've been going in and out of the patois, but I think it's important to emphasize the point. Don't ramp with this. Don't skylark with this. Okay? This is serious business. Talk to lawyers, reach out to us, trust us, communicate with us, know your rights, take it seriously, go to the website, read the executive orders yourself, see what they say, or I should say, read what they say, become informed. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Oliver. So why are we here? To separate fact from fiction. We've heard from the Consul General, the government of Jamaica, on what is. We've heard from Wayne Golding, likewise. I'm hearing, know the facts. Be responsible in what next steps. And be mindful of the current situation concerning the presidential executive orders. After the next presentation by Attorney Delia Walker Huntington, will be time for you to ask questions, for us to have a conversation. So please get your questions ready. As I said before, please, your best questions, your toughest questions, your searching questions. Please be respectful. Please keep your questions short, and so that more persons can benefit from being here this evening. And so now I introduce to you Attorney Delia Walker Huntington.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for being here this afternoon, and thank you, Father Ward and the Holy Family Church for hosting us. Well, after all of the presentations, I'm here to tell you what to expect, what are the implications of the executive orders. As Oliver rightfully said, the one that we need to be concerned about is the enhanced enforcement within the United States. There were three: the Muslim travel ban, the border wall, and of course the third one, the enhancement within the U.S. So one of the things that has done, and we are to expect, is that local, state, and state law enforcement officers are really now being deputized as immigration agents. This was tried in the past. It was dropped by the Obama administration, and it's now being picked up again. It's going to be subject to legal challenge, but just be aware that that is part of what is being done. And so this is going to affect both green card holders and the undocumented. The non-criminal undocumented, those are people who came on visas and overstayed, or who walked across the border, who came here on a boat from the Bahamas. They're now very vulnerable, because the executive order has says that they are a threat to national security and public safety. And all undocumented people are to be repatriated swiftly, consistently, and humanely. Keeping in mind that the estimate is anywhere from 11 to 14 million undocumented people within the United States. So that right away creates a problem. Where are you going to house these people? How are you going to enforce the removal? The order does also say that 10,000 Homeland Security agents will be hired. And it also says that overstays are to be detained until a hearing on the merits of their relief. So let's make it practical. You came on a visa, you overstayed, you're at the bus stop or you're driving down the street, you get stopped, tail light, ran a red light, just get caught up in a sweep. And you can't prove your status. ICE is going to take you into custody. Whereas previously, you got an attorney, maybe you have a child in the U.S. The child is not old enough to file for you, but the attorney would go in and make an argument and ask for the discretion of the judge to release you and for prosecutorial discretion to dismiss the case. Those are gone. The Homeland Security under Immigration and Customs Enforcement Agency arrests you. When you go into immigration court, you're no longer under the purview of Homeland Security. You're now under the purview of the Department of Justice. The Department of Justice is headed by the Attorney General. The Attorney General in waiting is Jefferson Beauregard Sessions, who says he's a law enforcement person, and there will be no such thing as prosecutorial discretion under his watch. It is also taking, before all of this, at least 2 years for a case to go to trial. And so the natural flow of this is that you're driving down the street, you get picked up, you're put in removal proceedings, and you are now told that you have to stay there until your case is heard, which is not going to be anytime soon. So what's going to happen? Most people are going to get frustrated. They're going to want to go home. So they're going to take the removal order and give Vance more work to come and send them home, because that's just the reality of what is going to happen. The enter without inspection, what we call Irie. So in Jamaica we had a very innovative process before they've modernized the passport system. It was called a photo switch passport. So I have a passport with my picture in it with my visa. Clever Jamaicans would remove the picture and insert their own and travel to the United States in somebody else's name and somebody else's passport. So that's called Irie, entered without inspection. If you enter that way, currently there is no way for you to regularize yourself. So even if you marry an American citizen, if you came in on a photo switch passport, you can't stay in the US and get your visa, your green card. You have to leave. And once you leave the country, you trigger a 10-year bar to coming back, a mandatory 10-year bar that only goes away if your US citizen spouse can demonstrate extreme, and I put extreme in quotation marks, hardship. But in addition to that, this order now makes being in the country Irie a crime. So not only have you entered without inspection, but you are now a criminal because you're present in the United States without having been inspected by an immigration officer. So those persons are very, very vulnerable. Green card holders are also vulnerable because you may have had a minor ganja offense 20 years ago, and you now want to apply for citizenship or you want to travel. My suggestion to you is do not travel. If you're a green card holder and you have ever been arrested, even if you were not convicted or you got a program and the case was dismissed or the case was null pros, meaning it never went, you stood up before the judge and the state attorney announced a null pros, do not travel, even if you have, because you may be caught and be unable to return. And there's a major difference between an alien who comes to the airport than one who's driving down the street. So if you've left the country and you're a green card holder and you're coming back, you have less rights than if you were stopped by immigration going down 441. At the airport, you're deemed an arriving alien. And so the relief that you may have from removal is far less than if you were driving down the street, whether you had a previous conviction or not, and you were stopped by immigration. The order also makes us aware that we're going to have to deal with something called detainers. In addition to militarizing local authorities to hold non-citizens, after you have served your sentence in jail, whether you got 6 months or 6 years, or if you've been arrested, the detainers require local law enforcement to contact ICE before you're released. So they will put an immigration hold on you. So you may have been picked up, I don't know, for a fight. You had a fight. Wife called police or husband called police on wife. And you've been picked up. If you are eligible for bond from the state court, court might issue you a bond, $1,000, $500, $5,000, and you want to post the bond. The local authorities are now going to inform ICE that you are not a U.S. citizen and you're going to be subject to be detained even after you've posted the bond. So you post the bond with the state, you can't go anywhere because immigration is going to hold on to you. The order has also changed what we call sanctuary cities. cities that refuse to turn over the undocumented, and some will actually shield them. Some churches also do the same. This executive order now gives Homeland Security the authority to designate a city as a sanctuary jurisdiction. So whether you want to call yourself a sanctuary city or not, if you are not complying with the executive order, then Homeland Security is going to designate your city as a sanctuary jurisdiction, and federal funding is going to be withheld. Last week, Miami-Dade handed over 11 undocumented persons to ICE as a result of this executive order. The other issue I want to talk about are green card holders. Oliver talked about those who travel every 6 months. There are many, many Caribbean people who hold green cards who don't live here. Many. They travel, they believe that if they travel every 6 months and they come up for a couple days or a few times a year, that's okay. It has always been an issue. It's so much so that the seminal case that deals with the domicile of a green card holder is actually a Jamaican man. It's a Jamaican who holds a case that we refer to all the time. What is going to happen now is that if you don't actually live here, you're going to stand a far higher possibility that you're going to lose your green card. A couple of things that can happen to you when you come to the airport. One, you're going to be asked to prove your domicile. So we advise our clients to make sure in Florida you have a Florida driver's license, you travel with bills, you have a cell phone, bank account, credit cards, utility bills, everything to show that you're really domiciled here. And you're going to have to travel a lot more often. One of two things can happen. They can ask you to sign an I-407, and this is one that was on social media. This was a rumor that was swinging around, abandonment of lawful resident status. Not everyone is going to be asked to sign that, and people are asked to sign it every day, but it's going to be increased now. If the officer believes subjectively that you do not really reside in the United States, then they can either ask you to sign to voluntarily relinquish the green card, or they can issue you what we call a notice to appear and send you to court. So if you know that you have strong footing, then I suggest you have them issue the notice to appear. And you call an attorney and you go to court and try to prove it. Or if you can't actually live here, there is a remedy called a re-entry permit that you can apply for, that if granted gives you 2 years to stay out of the country while you maintain your domicile, and it can be renewed for a second 2 years. The other thing that's going to happen is that people who are applying for non-immigrant visas, those are visitors visas, student visas, are going to be more strictly scrutinized. One of the rumors that was going around is that Jamaica only going to have 100 visas for the year, 300 visas. Then another story that I saw that looked so real says that Jamaicans no longer need visas to come to America. Looked very, very real. So there's a myriad of stories going around. So what can you do about what has happened from a legal standpoint? Certainly, if you're a green card holder, you've been here for 5 years or more, or 3 years if you obtained your green card through marriage to a U.S. citizen, and you're still married and still living with that U.S. citizen, by all means, become a U.S. citizen yourself. It's the only way to protect your status. When you become a U.S. citizen, if you want to go to Jamaica or Barbados and don't come back for 20 years, not a problem. As long as every April 15th you file your taxes with Uncle Sam, he don't care where you live. As of right now, because there's a new Uncle Sam up there. If you entered with a visa and you overstayed, please come to Holy Family Church on a regular basis. Go to happy hour on a Friday evening. Fall in love and get married to an American citizen. Because it's the only way you're going to be able to stay. If you're a green card holder with criminal conviction, do not travel. If you've even been arrested, do not leave the United States. We stress, and I know people people always badmouth lawyers. Shakespeare said, the first thing we do, let's kill the lawyers, right? But it's the first person you have to go to when you're in trouble. It's competent attorneys. Because the unlicensed practice of law in places like South Florida, where we have high immigrant population, is high. You drive around, you see a storefront, notary public, taxes, insurance, immigration. I don't know how all of those go together, but they do in our communities. So you have to be very, very careful. Much of this language, the Immigration and Nationality Act, before all of these executive orders came down, was second in complexity only to the IRS code. It is a complex area of law. We daily have to be fed information from the American Immigration Lawyers Association in order to keep up. Because not only does an executive order change the law, Congress passes statute, but, and the courts interpret cases every day that affects how the next case is going to be handled. Also, the administration in the form of Homeland Security interprets the statutes, and they also set the tone for the department. They put out administrative orders and rules, and some of them, I don't think that this new administration know about some of them because they're not talking. And some of them that were done under the Obama administration were done very quietly. So unless you're a practitioner in the day-to-day grind, you don't even know that some of these things can happen. So we encourage you, in part of coping with what's going on, is to hire competent counsel, because much of this, as I was coming over here this evening, I was listening to CNN in my car, and very excited, heated debate going on over the travel ban. The government and the lawyers for the state of Washington were arguing in the appellate court. The problem with these orders is that much of it is broad and vague, and a lot of it is going to be subject to legal challenge. Now, we know the legal challenges are in against the January 27th order, but this one that affects our community, you don't want to be the one to be paying the legal fee to challenge the administration because something happened. So you want to make sure that you have competent counsel going in, because nobody in here is going to pay $500,000 to a law firm to challenge the constitutionality of the executive order. And as lawyers as well, we have to be extra vigilant, because the confusion is so much that within the Department of Homeland Security and the Office of the Chief Counsel, who are the lawyers who prosecute you in court, everything is happening so fast, it's confusing. When immigration used to be called INS, Immigration and Nationalization Service, as lawyers we used to laugh and say it means I'm not sure. Because you go to one officer, they tell you one thing, you go to somebody else and you hear something else. So it's a very difficult area of law to practice in under normal circumstances. So now the confusion and the change is very huge. And several people have been denied citizenship, you know, maybe like your guy Oliver, and for various reasons. The immigration officers just put the file away. You're really subject to deportation, because you can apply for citizenship, not just be denied, but be placed in deportation. And a lot of times I've seen it over the years that the immigration officers know the person has been here for 10, 20, 30 years. They put the file away and they don't put you in deportation. That's not going to happen anymore. So it is very important that before you apply for citizenship or do anything, that you get competent information. Now, on the way over, the other thing I heard, which is not good news, that there was a new bill introduced today by 2 Republican congressmen, and the bill was to reduce legal immigration by 40%. So the attack is not just against those who are here undocumented, but for those of us who want to bring over brother and sister, mother, children, the bill is introduced today to stop, they say, to lower low-skilled immigrants. Well, I guess I would be considered a low-skilled immigrant because when I had got my green card, I didn't have a college degree. So I would definitely be barred. Certainly my parents, who never went to college, would not have been able to migrate. So there's going to be a lot of fight that we will have to do, those of us who are U.S. citizens. We want to encourage you to contact your Congress people. We have, which we will hand out later, we'll have at the table over here, we have the list of the congressional delegation from Florida, representatives and senators. And we know that the House switchboard has been inundated with calls since this new administration has been in place. So if you can't get through to Washington, all of the Congress people have offices. They have more than one offices in their district. Call, go there, tell them how much you are offended by the executive order. There's also talk to criminalize people who have taken benefits for their children, from school lunches to all these other things. People who, we know that many people who are here undocumented are paying taxes. They're working, they're paying taxes, but now you're going to go after them for all of these various things. So please, thank you once again for coming out, and we are open for your questions. We will be as honest with you as we can. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Delia. We're here to have a conversation, to separate fact from fiction. Focus on the facts, dispel the fiction. And before I get to your questions, again, this evening is being live streamed on IrieTimes.com. Hi, Granny. And it's being simulcast on Roots FM in Jamaica. I'm going to come down. Is that microphone working? Can you just give me a technical check moment here, please? And this is Dreamy. Dreamy. So, are you ready with your questions? Would appreciate short, sweet, so we can have more questions, more time for conversation.
Reverend Higgins, Sheila Acevedo from St. Ambrose in Fort Lauderdale. I deal with a lot of immigrants and have family members who are naturalized citizens or in process, etc., come from a multicultural family. I would like a little more information on the charges you're talking about if you've ever been arrested. Does this include misdemeanors and items that have been clearly completed years ago? So that's part one. Go ahead.
The answer to your question is yes. Executive order said any criminal charges. So whether you are convicted or whether you have charges against you, there is no distinction made between misdemeanor and felony. Now, the past, if you've had a conviction in the past, and that conviction would be one that would subject you to removal proceedings, yes, you're in danger. And remember, at any time, the courts have ruled, even the Supreme Court, that the law that made so many crimes aggravated felonies can be retroactive, even though the Constitution speaks against it, and it says Congress shall pass no law ex post facto, immigration is excluded. So answering your question, the best way is to say, yes, all criminal charges. Now, Once you get before an immigration judge, and once it's further up, maybe if it's something as minor as a petite theft, less than $50, maybe if it's possession of marijuana, less than 20 grams, there may be some possibility that there's relief. But the way the order is worded, it's broad, and so the officers are going to enforce it broadly. But as Delia pointed out, over time there will be challenges, and there'll be legal rulings, and there may be some refinement. But as we sit here today, any criminal conviction, any criminal charge.
Could you wait so that everyone can hear, please?
I worked with juvenile justice for 10 years. My question, what I'm questioning is the term criminal, because a misdemeanor, failure to appear in court for a traffic violation, a speeding ticket, something like that is a misdemeanor. That is not a criminal charge. That's my question. Are they considering those items criminal charges?
Okay. You have several situations where you can be cited or arrested, go to court. Let's deal with the state of Florida. Definition of a misdemeanor. You have two types of misdemeanor. First and second degree misdemeanor. If you're charged with a misdemeanor, no matter how simple you think the charge is, whether it's petty theft, whether it's driving with a suspended license, whether it's failure to appear in court, because that's a criminal offense also. No matter what you're charged with, if it's determined to be a misdemeanor, first degree misdemeanor means you can be arrested, convicted, and sentenced to up to 1 year in jail, okay, with a fine. A second degree misdemeanor, you can be sentenced to up to 60 days in jail. Any charge that carries a criminal penalty. You have criminal traffic charges also. You have regular traffic charges where you just get a ticket. For example, you're speeding, whatever. But an officer can bump that up to reckless driving, which can become a criminal citation and a misdemeanor. So what we're trying to tell you is that anytime you're really charged and summons to court, other than a simple traffic offense, which is called a citation or an infraction, they will make a determination that it's either a first degree misdemeanor or a second degree misdemeanor. And that will subject you under the new executive order to the scrutiny that we're talking about. And in addition, let me just mention this. You mentioned you work with juveniles, right? Juvenile charges can be misdemeanors or criminal offenses, but there are certain exceptions carved out in the immigration law for juvenile. However, if that juvenile becomes an adult and then commits a crime as an adult, sometimes those juvenile charges can come back to haunt them, okay?
Just to point out as well that the executive order says that non-citizens will be removed who have committed acts that constitute a chargeable criminal offense. So you don't even have to be charged, is what the act is saying, the executive order is saying. And people tend to downplay misdemeanors. You know, oh, it's a misdemeanor, it's not a big thing. It's not a big thing in state court. But even before this executive order, it's 2 or more misdemeanors makes you deportable. So people need to be very, very careful. And if you are in the criminal justice system, you have to be careful about taking pleas, making sure that you have proper representation, because nothing against public defenders, but even some criminal defense attorneys, they are not versed with immigration law. So they encourage their clients. Normally, if you're a U.S. citizen, you take a plea credit for time served, you walk away, you get your record sealed, it's as if it never happened. But if you are a non-citizen, it can be a very, very dangerous thing to do, to take a plea to a criminal charge, even a misdemeanor.
So what I'm hearing is, again, separating fact from fiction. What I'm also hearing is, to get straight to the heart of this evening's experience, seek competent counsel. This backdoor, back way is foolishness. Now, friends, remember we go until 8:30, so please, again, keep your questions to the point, and that therefore more persons can engage the conversation. Next person in the back. Oh, Jesus.
Jesus can't help you today. Good evening, everybody. My name is Maureen Campbell. I am a member of Holy Family. I have a question. I'm an employee of Dade County Public Schools. Now, what happens to the parent who is a naturalized citizen or a green card holder, brings a child up for the summer, have them remain, enroll them in school because they are entitled to an education. That child now gets into some altercation at school. You're arrested by school police, taken down to juvenile hall, you have a hearing. Does that child, 16 years old, could be charged as an adult? Are they placed on an immigration hold, and what's the repercussion for the parent?
You snooze, you lose.
The man have a big job and him want to take one my little walk. Who's going to respond?
One of the beauties of my practice is that I get to do both criminal and immigration. 95% of my clientele is Jamaican. That's probably because they get in the most trouble, right? No, but your question is a very good question. The way that they're dealing with juveniles now who have been arrested, right now as it stands, there's no checking into their immigration status from what we're seeing in the state system here in Florida. However, if there's an and juveniles come under a certain level of protection also when it comes to detention, state detention versus immigration detention. So usually what we advise people to do, especially parents, is to move to get them out of the system as quickly as possible. If the parent is a green card holder, obviously, the parent is authorized to be here. The child's papers still have not been filed for, or papers haven't been approved. But right now as it stands, and as far as the executive order, we don't see anything that's directed at the juveniles. However, as I said, there's going to be increased enforcement. So until a scenario like that comes up and it's actually looked at by the authorities, we don't know what they're going to do. However, a child can be placed in detention and deportation. We've seen it happen. And if that child doesn't have any relief available, most likely that child will be returned to the country they're from originally.
Dr. Campbell, I know you have a follow-up. Keep it short. No. Here's the microphone. I run things.
There is a way when I look at my roster, which I have to authorize every year, I know which child is undocumented and which one isn't based on their ID sequence. So we know which one of our children are undocumented, and there is a lot in the county school systems throughout the United States.
Thank you very much. Next question. Okay. Now I'm not getting paid for this run-up and down thing.
There is an issue with people bringing children to the United States. Yes, the Supreme Court says that everybody's entitled to an education. So you bring the children in, whether they're here, whether they came with a visa and overstayed or they came illegally, they are permitted to go to school through high school. This is where the Obama brought around the DACA, where if you came in before a certain age, and in 2012, he gave those young people the freedom to walk around without looking over their shoulders. They got work authorization, they could work or go to school and continue to live and renew their process. But if someone brings a child into the United States, before that child is 16, you should have the child adopted. Because in immigration law, if an adoption takes place before the child is 16 and the child lives with you for 2 years, either before or after the adoption, you can then, and you're an American citizen, you can file for that child. So if you're a grandmother or an aunt, or you're just fostering a child that somebody sent up from Jamaica and you try to help out, get the child adopted before the child is 16 and you will be able to file for that child. Giving a little bit more information here. When somebody gets arrested by ICE and you're issued a notice to appear and you go to immigration court, it's a whole charging order. The judge goes through this charging order. It says you are a citizen of Jamaica, you came here on or before the state, you're not a citizen of the US, you're removable for XYZ reason. So when the lawyer sits there, the lawyer and the judge is having this conversation, the alien's lawyer, and you admit or deny the allegations. And then it's up to the judge to say, based on whether you admit or deny the allegations, whether that person is actually removable. If the judge says, well, I find John Brown removable from the United States, what is the relief you are seeking? You can, in some cases, find relief, cancellation of removal, if you've been here for a certain number of years, even though you're undocumented, and you have certain equities, there can be a full trial that takes place to get you your green card. And several other reliefs. Could be marriage while you're in proceedings, several other things that we can go through to get relief. So this, again, is why it is important to get competent counsel to walk you through the process if you get picked up. It's not everybody who gets picked up by ICE who's going to be deported. Some people have relief, others do not. And when they don't have a relief, then they call Vance because it's time to take you home, right? But you have to be aware and be on top of it, and don't take advice from people on the street.
Attorney Huntington, you keep referring to Vance. Who is Vance?
Vance is Senior Superintendent Vance Carter, OD, from the Jamaica Constabulary Force, who is Vice Consul at the Jamaican Consulate, has been for a number of years. Superintendent Carter, would you please stand? He's a gentleman in charge of removal of Jamaicans. He's in charge of processing the removals.
Consul General, he's a good man. We will allow him to stay tonight. I will not decree an order for him to be removed from this property. Before we get to the next, I'll recognize you, sir. You have a handout there about Congress. Are you prepared to hand that out? Is it on the table? Okay. There's also... Hold on, can you...
What we have for you is we have two documents. One is the Florida representatives, and it's all the Florida representatives throughout the state. So you can look at them, and what we have done is we've gotten which party they're associated with and what committee assignments they have as a part of their responsibilities in the U.S. Congress. We have that. We also have another important document for you, which is titled Know Your Rights, and this has been put together by AILA, the American Immigration Lawyers Association, which gives some very good, useful, and condensed information about if you come into contact with immigration authorities, whether at a port of entry or in the United States itself. And it is on the table, and we'll add these further to the table.
And both of these documents are digitally available and can be distributed digitally. Before we going on till 8:30, one of the things later on, if you could mention, is where do we go from tonight in terms of inform, educate, equip the community? What might some possible next steps be? So it's not just tonight and be done, a flash in the pan and move on. Okay? Let me take this question now. Sir.
Hi, good night. I'm George McCullough, and I heard what you mentioned about the green card holders who may have committed themselves in some form. What happens though with somebody who has not, but they face the ICE or whoever? What are their rights? What do they give up? What do they not say? I mean, how do you respond if you are not somebody who have committed yourself in the past?
Well, it depends answer. It depends on where you are encountered. For example, if you are encountered coming into the country at a border point, you are obligated to answer the questions that are asked, because that's part of the agreement that you really enter into when you get a green card, because it's your burden to show the officer that you are admissible into the United States. So basically, they have a plethora of questions that they could ask you within an airport situation. What you have to realize in that situation, you don't even have the right to have a lawyer present with you while you're being questioned under that circumstances. They can put you into secondary inspection. As I said, they can make phone calls to relatives. They can check up on you. They can do a full investigation. They can ask you about if you have any criminal record, if you've ever committed any crime for what you've not been arrested. They can ask you a lot of questions, and basically you are obligated. Well, you can refuse to answer, as usual. You have the right to remain silent, yes, but it generally will be negative in terms of the end result. As a green card holder coming through, you most likely, if you have a problem that doesn't require detention, they can parole you into the country, meaning they can allow you to come into the country and not officially admit you. They can give you a little piece of paper with your photograph on it and say, report back to us with certain documentation, or they can send you to immigration court, or they can choose to detain you. So there are several situations that can come about from you answering the questions, but they have the right to inspect you. And that officer has so much discretion, it's unbelievable, because not even his supervisor can force him to change a decision that he's made regarding your admission. If you're a green card holder and you are encountered by law enforcement on the street, you have your usual rights, right to remain silent. You can provide your name. You can ask them if you're free to go. If they say you're not free to go, you're detained. You don't have to answer any questions. But I always tell people, you have a lot of rights, but nowadays you have to be careful how you exercise those rights, because you might exercise them at the peril of even losing your life. So I would encourage people to really kind of weigh the situation as it is. Don't be aggressive. Don't run. Try and be as cooperative as possible, especially if you know that you have nothing in your background to worry about. But you do have the right, if you're encountered out of the airport or out of the border situation to not answer their questions, to, ask to speak to a lawyer, because that's very important. Ask, and that's why I said before, you should make sure you have contact numbers. So if you are held up on the street by law enforcement relating to immigration, you can call a relative, you can call somebody, let them know what's happening. So you do have additional or more rights, I would say, if you're not within the confines or the radius of the borders.
You kept saying, know your rights, but also be responsible, not be arrogant as if you know it all, and exercise wisdom or prudence in how you go about your rights. And again, I just want to reinforce, seek competent counsel. Now, remember, yes, certainly, I'm walking to you, sir. Remember, we are finished at 8:30, so please, as many more questions, at 8:30, the lights go out.
And a quick follow-up. A number of us normally secure our green cards at home. I'm hearing tonight that that's a bad idea.
Secure your green card.
I mentioned it before. It is actually a misdemeanor federal offense not to carry your green card. My suggestion, people always say, well, I'm afraid I'll lose it. Make a copy, keep the copy at home, keep your green card on you at all times. It is going to be so important in the next, Also, very important, if you're a green card holder or you're here on a work permit, you need to put a change of address in within 10 days of moving. You must do that. The reason, if there's any immigration notices or documents that are to be sent out to you, any notification, they'll be sent to the address they have on record for you. And it could be something as detrimental as a notice to appear in court. You don't appear, they can order somebody deported based on their non-appearance, and they can say, well, I moved, that's why I didn't get it. You are required by statute, by regulation, once you move, within 10 days, you fill out a form called an AR-11, and you have to notify the immigration authorities that you have moved, okay?
This is certainly helpful. Tonight is certainly informative. And how things and times have changed. And what I'm hearing is the change continues.
Thank you, Father Ward. Good evening, attorneys. I'm hearing a lot about everything else but people who are citizens. Here is the scenario. So I'm driving home this evening, and I get stopped because of a light not working, whatever reason they want to stop me. It's going to take them but a sentence to know I man don't born here, I just on here, even though I am a U.S. citizen. How then do I prove that I am a U.S. citizen and not a green card holder or here illegally?
Don't drive.
Well, to answer your questions, first of all, you're right. Probably by your voice, the conclusion would be drawn that you are not a citizen. A couple of things. If the officer is speaking to you in a fashion that you feel that you can communicate and there's not a confrontation, then try to be cooperative. And if the officer says, what is your immigration status? I'm a citizen. Really? What proof do you have? Now, most people don't walk with their passport, but certainly maybe you have a voter registration card, so you can produce that. If the officer has further concerns, they can then bring in Customs and Border Protection or ICE, and then a check can be done. And certainly if you're a U.S. citizen within the last 20 years, the records are superb. Maybe the records are a bit spotty further back than that. But truly, even under these changed times and these executive orders, if you're a citizen, you're pretty much okay. You don't have to worry yourself. No, that doesn't mean that that gives you a license to do stupidity. But I would not be worried about driving and so forth. I wouldn't also decide that you're going to try to do Formula One moves on the road, but I wouldn't be too worried. But certainly a voter's registration, answer, I'm a citizen. If you get further questions, really, how did you do that? I naturalized. I naturalized in Miami in 2006, etc. And the officers will probably be okay with that. Okay?
And it's very important to underscore that as a citizen, you have certain, I should call them, enable rights. If they go that far beyond you telling them you're a citizen and they put you in some sort of peril, there will be hell to pay, because you are at the highest level of the food chain now in this country. And that's why it is so important that you understand that you have so much more credence and rights as a U.S. citizen. And that's why one of the underlying messages that we bring in our practice to our clients is that as soon as you're eligible to become a U.S. citizen, you should make the right checks, of course, and go forward with that, because that plants you in this country like you would not believe.
Thank you, Father Ward. And ladies and gentlemen, please forgive me this one question. But as a follow-up to the comment that you just made, or the answer that you just provided, are there cases where citizenship can be revoked?
Absolutely, CG. Citizenship can be revoked for several reasons. Most often it's because people fraudulently obtain their citizenship or fraudulently obtain their green card. Let me give you a very common scenario in our community. So mother files for son. Son is single. It's taken 7-8 years. Son can't wait. So son goes off and he gets married before mom's petition comes through. But he doesn't tell immigration. So he continues the process as if he's a single adult son. Goes to the embassy, he gets his green card in the category of a single adult son. He now comes to America as a single adult son. He has his wife back home. He turns around and he does all kinds of things. He files for divorce, or him get a paper that says him was divorced, and him do this and him do that, and him get him citizenship. And sometimes it's at the citizenship interview that they discover that you fraudulently obtained your green card. You can then be placed in deportation and you're going home. Or you've done something after you've gotten the citizenship and it is discovered that you fraudulently obtained your green card, or even the visa. We have a thing in Jamaica that we have, of course, a lot of common law relationships, and we walk about very proudly and call the person you're living with your spouse. And we go to the embassy and we fill out the form and check off that we're married when we're single, because we're trying to get a visa to come to America. When we come to America, we're really a single person, but the visa was issued to a married person. And then we want to turn around and we want to marry somebody else to get the green card. Oops, but I told them I was married before. And some people perpetuate the lie on, and they actually get their citizenship. And then it's discovered, and the citizenship is revoked. Sometimes also, you go in for the interview, you pass the interview for your citizenship, but between the time you're interviewed and sworn in, you get arrested, and you don't tell them. That's another way to check off revocation of citizenship down the line.
Consul General, let me add to that another one. There's a question on the N400 application that says, have you ever committed a crime for which you have not been charged? What's interesting is I had a case where a gentleman got into problems. He got naturalization, didn't confide in me, came back, and what it turned out is he was indicted after he got his citizenship, but the DEA was in charge of the operation, and they gave information to Department of Homeland Security that he was under investigation for multiple trafficking in cocaine crimes before he naturalized. So that's how they got him, and he was denaturalized for that.
Good evening. I'd like to know, many of us have two passports. If you're an American citizen and you've obtained your Jamaican citizenship, your passport, for a lot of reasons. If you travel to Jamaica and you use your Jamaican passport as entry, and you're coming back into the United States now, you whip out your American passport, there's no stamp in that passport that said you have left the United States. What do you tell us about doing that?
Don't travel.
There is no problem with that. I do that every month. I have two passports. I land in Jamaica with my Jamaican passport so that I can stay there for as long as I want, and I can work, most importantly. And when I come back to the United States, I show my U.S. passport, and they swipe it. You know, this is why everybody is now on the, the magnetic strip and the machine readable. So when they come in and they ask you how long you've been out, and you think, oh, I can tell them, you know, I was out for 2 weeks when I was really out for 7 months. They know. So the passport, all that information is there. Plus, whenever you travel, before the flight even takes off, they know who is on that flight. Wayne and I had a very important, no, I shouldn't say important, improbable case a few months ago where a gentleman actually had not gotten his permanent green card yet. He was being, we believe, investigated. It's a marriage case, separated from the wife, and he left on a cruise, had a little problem coming back in. They let him in, and then he went to Jamaica. And when he got to Jamaica, he spent time, and at the airport, they wouldn't allow him to board the plane to come back. But he had permission to travel. And he couldn't understand, so he called me. I called the embassy. We went through all of this, and you knew that they were seeing something, but they wouldn't tell me what they were seeing. And Wayne even went to the immigration office up in Jacksonville to look at it. And what happens was they tricked him. They actually trapped him. Instead of issuing him a notice to appear to go to court to be deported, they waited until he left the country and then stopped him from coming back in. So it's not a system to play with. Not a system to play with.
I don't know if you're going to ask the question, but this has come up, and Delia and I had a very interesting conversation about this, and this relates to citizenship. There's a series of questions on the application form, asks you if you've ever claimed to be a U.S. citizen, or if you've ever voted in any federal, state, or local election, or you've ever registered to vote in any federal, state, or local election. Let me try to be very clear with you. There is some rumor in the community that it refers to only federal. So if you don't vote for the president and you're a green card holder, but you vote in a local election for a councilwoman or a councilman, or you vote for school board, that's okay. It's not, because that's a false claim to U.S. citizenship. Let me be very clear with you. As a U.S. citizen, you can vote in any election. As a green card holder, you can vote in no federal, state, or local election of any type. The only thing you could do is if you're a member
of a condominium board or association, and you want to vote in that, go ahead and try, maybe, but knowing how some of those folks are, they will report you for that. So probably don't do that. But there is actually information on the internet that says, as a green card holder, you can vote in a state or local election, but you cannot vote in a federal election. Wrong. As a green card holder, you cannot vote in any election. And if you do, and you are filing for citizenship, you're in serious trouble, because that's a false claim to citizenship. So it's not only a denial of the application, but it is a guaranteed trip to the immigration court. All right? So be very careful with that.
Just one follow-up point too. Also on applications for employment, be very careful. They also have questions on those applications that ask if you are a U.S. citizen. Some people will check yes, and they're not. They're trying to get a job. And that can present a problem for you down the road if you're trying to adjust status. Simple things. We talk about the big things, criminal cases and all of that stuff. And I know probably most of that doesn't apply to people here. At least I'd hope so, Father Ward. But it's a simple stuff. It's a simple stuff where people are tempted to withhold information, because that can also be a problem, or to give false information. Anytime you're applying for any immigration benefit and you're not sure of the question, that's why you need professional help to answer it. Every box on those immigration forms means something legally. It might seem simple. Might ask for 5 years of address, simple stuff, and you might think it means nothing. It means a lot, and it could be a detriment to you ever becoming a green card holder or a citizen of this country. So that's why we emphasize, a lot of people are dabbling in the practice of immigration law. People are saying, well, I'm a notary public, or I am a paralegal. Yes, some people are allowed to fill forms, but they're not allowed to interpret the law, tell you what the law is, or just do this, man, they won't find out. We had one case in Orlando where about 60 people lost their opportunity to get their green card because a notary was marrying them, taking the pictures with the same background, and they were using all the same type of documents submitting to the immigration, and they caught wind of it. Although these people were honest and doing the right thing, they got caught up in this investigation of this particular person and ended up losing their opportunities to become permanent residents. So it can be simple stuff, and that's why we're encouraging you to really seek professional help.
Again, separating fact from fiction. Know your rights. Seek competent counsel. Can you again reiterate the political action steps with reference to the handout that you had to be able to call your representative? Could you say something about that process?
Well, it's the right of the people to petition their government for a redress of their grievances, and that's what you're doing. So we've outlined tonight the executive order that we are concerned about, one of the two that was issued on January 25th that has some broad implications for our community. And we suggest that you contact your congressperson if you're a U.S. citizen, and also look on that list to see which person in Florida is on the immigration subcommittee. So you don't have to speak directly to your own congressperson. You can call anybody. And if you go to www.house.gov, that's the House of Representatives, all of the Congress people are on there. Or Senate.gov has all 100 senators listed there. Pick the ones that are on the committees that can have an impact on us. Call them. Call them in Washington. The phones are busy. Call the local office. Send an email. The problem that we have is that the anti-immigrant community has always outnumbered us in terms of calls to Congress over the years. Not just now, but 10, 15, 20 years. They're the ones who flood and tell their Congress people, don't vote for this, don't vote for that, I'm going to vote you out. You need to start doing the same thing, telling Congress what you want because they represent you. If you're a registered Republican, it doesn't mean that you can't speak to the Democratic congressperson that represents your district. And the same, if you're a registered Democrat and your congressperson is a Republican, you call their office just the same and tell them what it is that you want. And if you are eligible to become an American citizen, now more than ever is the time to do it. If you are here and you're undocumented or you have any family or friend who is undocumented, make sure that they know how to get information. So we have a problem in our community. We think that we're better than the Mexicans and the people who walk across the border because we came on a plane. We have this chip on our shoulder. I mean, I hear it all the time from clients because we came with a visa and we overstayed. Somehow we think we're better than the people who walked across the border. And so we allow them to demonstrate for us, and we sit back and we're not out there holding any placards and saying anything. We need to get over that and understand that we're all in the same boat. If you don't have any status, you just don't have any status. Some of you may be able to come to church, fall in love, get married, and get your status regulated. Others of you may not. And Father will happily perform the marriage. He married me and my husband, so I'm sure he'll be happy to marry any one of you.
And I don't get paid yet. But Delia, become a citizen and register to vote. And vote. And vote. And vote. And vote dead or alive.
Thank you, Father Ward. Ladies and gentlemen, I just want to quickly add that we have passport application forms on the table as well. We have a brochure on what the consulate does, what we can do and can't do, and we also have application forms for birth certificates. Just to quickly add that since the executive orders have been issued, we have received about a doubling in the number of inquiries about Jamaican citizenship. Our office is the appropriate office to contact. We can guide you on that process. Persons who are born to Jamaican nationals are entitled to Jamaican citizenship. It's an application process, and we actually go back to, I believe, great-grandparent, as long as that proof can be established. So, just to say that I think people are concerned and are looking at options, and one of those options include getting a registration certificate as being a Jamaican citizen. Just those few announcements. Thank you.
Would you, Rose, slow down. When you get to my age, you can't move so fast.
Delia, going back to what Delia said, if we're a citizen, we should vote because we don't have the voice if we don't vote. And to let everyone know we're here tonight, if you are a citizen, remember in 2018, every 435 of those members of the House of Representatives are up for re-election. Every one of them. So we can change a lot of things. Let's not be apathetic.
Just a minute. I'd like to move this along because I want you to go home tonight.
I would like to know a person who comes here on a visiting visa and have a baby, but they are within that 6 months period, and then they go back to Jamaica with a baby. Would they be allowed to re-enter the country?
No.
Well, it depends. If you paid for the birth of your baby, that's fine. It's not illegal to have, for someone who's not a citizen or a resident, to have a child in America. And the problem comes in is that when you come on a visitor's visa, you go to the hospital to have the baby, cousin or auntie tell you apply for Medicaid. The hospital will give you the Medicaid because they want to be paid. So the U.S. government, through Medicaid, pays the hospital for the birth of the child. But you, the visitor, have now become a public charge on the taxpayers of the of America. And so we have had many scenarios where people are traveling back with the baby. They have to sleep at the airport that night because they send them back on the next plane. Or when you go to apply for the baby's passport in Jamaica or wherever, and they ask you who paid for the birth and you can't provide any documentary evidence, they cancel your visa. Or when your visa is up for renewal, it's not renewed. So if anybody's planning to come to America to have a baby, nothing wrong with that. But just make sure that you pay for the birth of the child. The child is entitled to everything because the child is an American citizen. But your medical bills, you need to pay for it yourself.
There was a questioner on this side, in the back. Could you state your name, please, sir? And which radio station?
Okay, I was a little late, so I probably missed a couple of things. Please underline for us that the green card doesn't belong to an alien. It belongs to the government. When you proffer the green card at the airport, you're really asking for permission to enter. But especially for our people, it needs to be underlined that if you start cussing out the agent behind the counter at the airport, they can come and get you.
Just a minute, sir. Just a minute, sir. And then I'll come to this person, and then I'll go to that person, and then we must go home.
Thank you for that, Mr. Barnes. Very good point. Green card holders, when you come to the United States, you don't have an automatic right of admission like a citizen. Each time you come in, you're seeking permission to enter. It means the officer who you come in contact with can then swipe the card, and if they find any negative information, they can make inquiry to see if you're admissible. So it is not a right. It is rather a privilege to make an application for admission. That's number one. Number two, we come from a country where we were taught good manners. We know good manners. But it never ceases to amaze me how we also know how to misbehave. And we also seem to know how to misbehave at the wrong time. And the wrong time is with an immigration officer who may have a few questions. And if you show some respect and civility, may well say, okay, very well, come in. But when you start with the and so forth, not going to go well.
Lord, you can cuss sweet, you know. Yes, this lady was before you, sir. So 1, 2, 3, and we must go home.
My name is Jean. On Terika's question, she asked about the baby. At what age can that baby file for that parent?
May I become your counsel in addition to being your... She pregnant? I do believe in the virgin birth. 21 is the answer. 21. The child must be 21. Okay. Okay. Sir, thank you for your patience.
Just a thought. Could you expand on the importance of global entry? Global entry from as immigration.
So you want some information on global entry?
Okay, global entry is of course discretionary, and what it is it's supposed to speed the process of coming through in terms of inspection. Problem with it is it invites you to provide an awful lot of information about yourself to the government, and now that information is spread to numerous agencies. Let me tell you where I think global entry is a good idea. I have a client of mine who happens to be Colombian. He has a last name and a date of birth that is exactly the same as a wanted Colombian drug trafficker. So when he came in with his visa the first time, he had an entire welcoming committee. He had 15 agents and 2 dogs. Ultimately, they said to him, look, you're going to have to do global entry to clarify this. Otherwise, each time you come in, it's going to be a problem, and we're going to detain you for up to 4 hours. But you need to understand that the global entry is a very, very detailed process. And so there's a great deal of inquiry. And I've heard of cases where people are told, we're going to deny you the global entry because there is something negative. But they don't tell you what. So you want to be careful with it. In the case where they're telling you there's a problem, you have the same name as somebody, same date of birth, etc., you may have no choice. But other than that, unless you're really a frequent traveler, more so someone who's traveling a lot for business, as a U.S. citizen, maybe. But other than that, I am cautious of it because of the scrutiny and because of the amount of information they can get from you, because you not only fill out the form, but then you speak to an agent, and the agent interviews you in detail.
Just as a matter of information, they have records on all of you, period. Just to let you know. But I have run into situations where people come to us for advice and we ask them for documents. They ask them for their citizenship certificate, old passports, whatever, and people throw away these documents, believe it or not. And it's sometimes a difficult path to get them where they need to get because they don't have possession of these documents. However, there are ways to retrieve copies of certain documents that have gone through the immigration process. There are things we can file with the government to get information, different agencies. But it's not all the time you get back the documents with everything on it. Sometimes it's redacted. Sometimes some agencies won't release it. But if you do have any concerns about past documents that you've lost, again, seek the advice of an attorney. They can help you to navigate to the agencies that might possess these documents. And also for you, for the Jamaicans who are here, if you have your old white paper, birth certificate, long paper from Jamaica, I encourage all of you to get the new security birth certificates, because the U.S. agencies are no longer accepting those old birth certificates, and marriage certificates too, and death certificates. And there's a wonderful program that the Registrar General has. You can go online, pay for it, apply for it, provide information they need, and it's mailed to you by Federal Express, usually within 3-4 days. So you can't complain that you can't get it. But I warn you in this sense, because there's a lot of people who have birth certificates that we're learning now that were not actually issued by the officials at Spanish Town. A little man went round the corner, and it's a serious problem, because now people who came in on those birth certificates might face problems. So you see what I'm saying? Verification is at its highest now. Everything is linked. The U.S. government is linked with the Jamaican government and the security, and it's all, the world is one place electronically now. So don't think you can pull a fast one. So if you do have an issue, again, consult with an attorney.
So before I move to the final two questioners, again, separate fact from fiction. Be informed. Be equipped. And part of it is seeking competent counsel. By the way, Daley, you talked about the different storefronts, and you ended at the church, because next to the church is the bar. The legal bar, not that kind of bar.
Good evening. My name is Stephen Henry, and I also worship here at HFC. I came in a few minutes late, so I do not know if this was addressed. But I'm a bit conflicted because you hear that the United States does not recognize dual citizenship. I know you overheard earlier that you can travel on a passport and go here and come in on another one. So could you please clear that up for me? Does the United States recognize dual citizenship? And if you can give me any additional information, I'll appreciate it.
Thank you, Stephen Henry. Yes, I'm coming back. As I said, two, last, and then we're finished. Thank you. Stephen, I have two. Can you get me one from St. Kitts? Thank you.
The U.S. does not encourage dual citizenship, but it is your birth country, your national country, that you have to be concerned about. So it is, for many years, Trinidad did not recognize dual citizenship, so they did not allow their nationals to hold two citizenships, which means that once you became a U.S. citizen, you would give up your Trinidadian citizenship. They now recognize it. So it's not America that you have to be worried about, is where you were born. So in Jamaica, we recognize dual citizenship, and the only time dual citizenship with the U.S. becomes a problem in Jamaica is if you want to run for office. If you're going to hold a constitutional office in Jamaica, then being a U.S. citizen becomes a problem. So if you wanted to go back to Jamaica to run as an MP, you would have to give up your U.S. citizenship. But if you're a Canadian citizen or a British citizen, you can go to Jamaica and still maintain those foreign citizenships and run as an MP. Okay? So it's just that the U.S. doesn't encourage it, but it is recognized, but it's not encouraged.
And if you hold U.S. citizenship and you're in Jamaica and something happens, Uncle Sam will come for you. Okay? So there's a benefit. And people should not be scared because you're not breaking the law, because the passport is your mode of entry. And once you're coming back into the U.S., you need to present your authority, whether it's a green card or U.S. passport or a visa, to come back in. The Jamaican passport by itself doesn't allow you to come back in the United States unless you have the applicable visa stamped in it. But going to Jamaica, you can use your Jamaican passport to enter, and there are some benefits that go with it. If you want to check the Jamaica Diaspora Southern United States website, you will see those benefits.
And just a little, lawyers, we all have war stories. We love to exchange stories. So several years ago, I was co-counsel on a very large drug case. Somebody brought in an entire trailer load of marijuana from Jamaica, and they were caught. No permit for it. And so it was in federal court. After the entire DEA, everybody had been tracking them. They watched the movement of the trailer from the port to where it was eventually. They didn't stop them until it got to where it was going. And so one of the Jamaicans had 2 passports, and the U.S. attorney was ready to charge them with it. And because I was the only Jamaican American on the case, there were several lawyers, and only because I was there, I was able to say to the judge that it is not illegal to have two passports. So again, it comes back to having competent counsel when you're in certain things. There are things that the three of us know because we're Jamaican, so we're culturally aware, and we're Caribbean people, so we're culturally aware of other Caribbean islands, and we're able to represent you in a different manner. Not taking away anything from our American colleagues, because we've all co-counseled with native-born American attorneys on various cases. But in certain cases, it's to your benefit to have someone from your culture, because those cultural differences can be pointed out. And we could all tell you stories going on and on and on, where people come in and misrepresent. Alternative facts are not new. They misrepresent information about your culture to a judge, and if you don't have the right attorney there to argue against it, it can be viewed in a very different light.
Thank you for the correction of genuine facts versus the alternative.
Hi, hello. Should I stand up? Oh, okay. I guess the last question might have been a part of my question, but I'll ask anyway. I was actually born here, and my parents are Jamaican born. And, oh, thank you. And I wanted to know, my dad thinks I'm crazy, but that's another story. But I'm interested in applying for dual citizenship in Jamaica, as a matter of fact. And with all the craziness with the travel ban and everything that's going on with the executive order, is it a good time, I don't know, to apply for dual citizenship if you choose to want to make an extended stay to Jamaica, or of that nature, if I wanted to stay for work purposes or what have you. And the applications I saw over there in the table, I know that's for Jamaican passports, but does that have anything to do with the dual citizenship? Is that a different application? If I may ask that. That's right. I'm sorry? Oh, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Oh.
Exactly. Thank you for that question. As I said earlier, persons born to Jamaican citizens or Jamaican nationals can apply for Jamaican citizenship. That's a choice that you make on your own. Our office would be able to facilitate that application. There are forms that are required and proof, of course, of your parents' Jamaican nationality. Once all of that is submitted to our office, there's a fee. We send it to the Passport Immigration Citizenship Agency. They issue a certificate with your photograph and appropriate verbiage to indicate that you are now recognized as a citizen of Jamaica. And with that certificate, you can apply for a Jamaican passport, which is then the sort of ready proof that you walk with to say that you're a Jamaican, or the ready evidence of your Jamaican nationality. But it's based on the certificate. There is no process per se for dual citizenship. But you would apply for the Jamaican citizenship certificate through the Passport Immigration and Citizenship Agency. That's correct. That certificate represents if you're not born in Jamaica, that is going to be the document that establishes your Jamaican nationality. If you're born outside of Jamaica, so you get the citizenship certificate, which establishes your right to be considered as a Jamaican citizen. Not yet. You get the certificate first, and then you apply for the passport after.
Thank you very much. Thank you. So for closing remarks.
On behalf of my colleagues and most importantly friends, Delia and Wayne, we would like to thank each and every one of you very, very much. I've been trying to think of the words to pull it all together. Now, it's not going to be terribly intelligent or witty what I'm going to say, but it's going to be Jamaican. You've heard about counsel, seeking competent counsel, talking to lawyers, attorney-client privilege. I'm going to close with this one that we all know from back home. Those who can't hear must feel. All right? Good night.
Would you stand for me, please? No, I'm a parson. I'm a preacher. So I'd like to do a prayer that's going to last about a half an hour. Not. Jean Laurie Chin, in her book, Soul Dance with Poems and Writings, wrote, entitled God's Unblinking Eye. Under God's unblinking eye, we all have lived, we all have died. Dust and ash are wealth and glory. Our deeds are our enduring story. Life's trials are a test of love. Will you be vulture or will you be dove? Work is prayer, do it well. To cool the heat in someone's hell, gently take your neighbor's hand, then step lightly in this land. Again, welcome to Holy Family, and thank you so much for being here tonight. And may I invite your applause in thanking our panelists for tonight's But also, can I ask your applause for the media team here? And when they arrived this evening, I did check their passports, which are all valid. My friends, have a wonderful, God bless night.